We've all seen the world of international espionage through the books and movies of James Bond. But is this what it really is like? Michael has some unique insights, and he will share some of the stories of a real-life 007. Michael Kors, what James Bond never told you, what James Bond never told you. Michael Kors.
Okay, good. Good.
Someone asked me my name.
What's your name?
Bond. James Bond. I don't know about you, but when I hear the word spy, that's the first thing I think of. Immediately, James Bond. That character, through books and movies, is instantly imparted into our culture such that everyone knows about that person and his life. But how true is it? Sure, we all know Hollywood embellishes, but is there any truth behind people like this? I have a little bit of an insight. You see, my brother Jim, for 10 years, worked for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He was a special investigator involved in a group called SSG, Special Surveillance Group, and he worked on foreign counterintelligence cases undercover. So I thought it would be interesting to compare someone that we all know to someone that you will know by the end of my speech. So let's compare James Bond versus James Cords. Now, background. What background does James Bond have? James Bond is a former SAS. That's Military Special Forces. James Cords, his background, he was a music major. Now I know you're asking yourself, does knowing about music theory help someone catch spies? And the answer, no. Fortunately, he also studied a few other things. He graduated studying political science. And such that by the time he graduated from college, he already had an offer from the FBI, which is good because it's about a 6-month process at least of background checks and interviews and tests. Once you get the job, now it's time for training. What sort of training did James Bond have? Well, we know that to be a 00 agent, you have to have 2 kills. Jim? No, I'm kidding. My brother's never killed anyone. The training that he had, he went for 16 weeks to Quantico, which is the FBI training facility. There, he did lots of physical training, self-defense courses, a lot of classroom and studying. And what I found most interesting, vehicle training. In fact, he claims that this was perhaps the most difficult and most stressful. This is where you practice driving cars at high speed and quick dives in and out of the road and sliding cars around. I don't know about you. I love auto racing, and I've spent lots of money doing the exact same thing that he was actually doing for free. So I don't buy his statements that any of this was stressful. That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, now that you have this job, it's time to be assigned. James Bond, where's he assigned? Well, we know he spends a lot of time in Monte Carlo, in the casinos, right, jet setting around the world. Jim, well, he went to Washington, D.C. Now, the interesting thing here is that he did not work out of the FBI headquarters in Washington. He didn't even work out of the Washington field office. He got to work out of a secret building. Now, this building had a false business up front because he was undercover, and everyone in his building or in their office could not explicitly state that they were in the FBI. So kind of a neat little thing. When I would visit him in Washington, I didn't actually know where he worked. He wasn't allowed to show me. Once you have this job and you're stationed wherever you are, what does every good spy need? Every good spy needs a car, right? James Bond, what did he drive? Aston Martin. That's right. James Cords, what did he get to drive?
Chevy Suburban.
Very close. I think he had a Ford Taurus for quite a while. Not too exciting. But if you consider he's undercover doing a lot of surveillance work, you have to blend in. You can't blend in driving around in an Aston Martin. Funny stories about cars is when people were assigned, the newest people always got the last choice of cars. And inevitably, someone would get really excited because they'd end up with something interesting, like a Ford Mustang. Like, oh wow, this is great. Well, it is great until you realize that when you're doing surveillance and you're in your car for 8 to 10 hours every day and you can't leave, it's not good to have a little sports car. You want something with some room. Jim's favorite car while he was there was a Dodge. He spent so much time in it in the middle of the night, he called it Hotel Durango. When you're working, James Bond, he doesn't work alone, does he? He has some co-workers. His boss is known only as M. The guy who makes all the little secret gadgets, Q. Now here's something that's true. Everyone my brother worked with all had code names. This is important because they speak over the radio to communicate. Radios are encrypted, but have to play it safe. You can't use your real names over the radio. So everyone is assigned a code name. When my brother would speak about what it was like at work and I talked to him and he'd talk about his coworkers, to me it always sounded like he was talking about some really bad G.I. Joe action figure. He's talking about Ranger and Gridiron and Santa and Flash and all these people. The funny part here is that I would visit my brother in Washington, and after work I'd meet him and some of his coworkers. Well, these guys spend all day with each other, talking to each other in code names. I honestly don't think they can remember what their real names are. So sure enough, everyone's talking about, oh, hey, Santa, go talk to Truman and tell... A little bit hard to get used to and a little bit funny. When James Bond is working, he has a goal. He has some measurement of success. What is that? Well, it's usually saving the world. When I think of Jim and the work he did, his goal and his success, also saving the world, in my opinion. He worked on some pretty important cases. In his 10 years, I don't really know much about what he worked on. He couldn't talk about it, and he still doesn't. But a few cases were actually closed and made the national news. Does anyone remember in the year 2001, a man by the name of Robert Hansen?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. My brother worked on this case. Robert Hansen was a 25-year veteran of the FBI. He was arrested and charged with treason for selling secrets to Russians for a period of 20 years. He's the highest level FBI person ever convicted of espionage, and arguably the most damaging spy in US history. Jim worked on this case for quite a while. One of the stories that he told me was they found a dead drop. A dead drop is where his Russian handlers, or rather Robert Hansen, would leave some information hidden secretly. His handlers would pick it up and leave us some money as payment. Well, they found one of these, a dead drop. My brother's roommate at the time, one of his co-workers, found it as a trash bag hidden under a footbridge in, I believe, Fox Creek Park. It contained $50,000 in cash. Cool. So the FBI decided they weren't going to take it right away. They would leave it, keep it under surveillance to see if anyone would come pick it up. This way they could trace his Russian handlers. My brother Jim was there in the park in the middle of the night. They dug a little shallow hole so he could lay down, cover him in dirt and leaves, and he sat there, or laid there, all night with his binos watching to see if anyone would come. That's a long way from Monte Carlo. So next time you hear about spies and espionage, sure, you'll probably think of James Bond, but take just a minute and spare a thought for people like Cords, James Cords.